would like to say thanks to Roberto, because he comes from Puerto Rico, so it's a long trip to come here. So thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, the talk.
Thank you.
Talk will be obviously of packaging Django project for PyPI.
Thank you. Well, grazie ciao a tutti, grazie per essere qui. This is a topic about how hard it is to package Django projects so that they can be easily installed. It was born from this project, Mayan EDMS, a document management system. It's an enterprise software, and our users are not technical. There are people in suits and black suits and ties. So the problem was to try to make a Django project to be as easily and as installed as possible. Like Patrick said, I come from Puerto Rico. I've been doing software development from a lot of a time when doing software development was not cool. I also managed the awesome Django package list. You can find it in Django and in GitHub. So whenever you are starting a new project, be sure to visit. Maybe there's a package that will save your life in a project. We are very big fans of Django, and we sponsor any project we can find. We have sponsored the schema migrations, the book of high-performance Django from Lincoln Loop. We sponsor the multi-template engine project in Kickstarter. We also support the fellowship program of Django. And we are starting the Python Latin community group from Puerto Rico. We are trying to encompass all the Latin American countries and create the Latin American Python community. And we have our first event. It's called Weekend of Python. So if you want to have a Python event in a place like this, be sure to follow the website. Date, we haven't settled the date. It's between September and November, so you'll have the chance to escape the cold into a nice toasty island. That's the address, pythonlatino.com. I work for Cryptico, so Cryptico is also a big fan of Django, and it sponsored the Django REST Framework Kickstarter, and it became the first Latin American company to become a Django Software Foundation corporate member. So this is the root of the problem. When you want to install a Python package, you read the documentation, you do pip install, you add it to your install apps, and you have it working. When you want to install a Django project, the story is a little bit different. And this is usually the frustration we get from users, usually from non-Python users, because even though Django for us is very easy, there's one truth, which is our users still need to know a little bit of Django for them to use our projects. And usually that's not the case. And we try to be courteous and friendly, and in our documentation we point them to the Django documentation. So if you want to use this project, you need to know a little bit. If you want to change the database settings, you have to go to that documentation in Django. So basically, whenever there's a question in the Google group of our project, we tell them basically to go to Django. So if you want to use our project, you have to go to Django. They usually don't like it because they want to use our project. They don't want to learn about Django. And the issue is there's a few problems for our users are not programmers. When they want to use a project, they usually want to use a finished product. So they're used to doing just a setup, okay, and use the product. So we have to make our Django projects behave like that. And right now, installing Django projects is usually cloning a Git repository because there's no Python projects on PyPI. The users have to, by hand, change the settings py file. They have to create their own secret key, which they have no idea what it is for. The Python structure, the Django's default structure, file structure is not well suited for packaging, and a few other problems. So the goal is to take what is a Python package instruction set indistinguishable from installing a Django project from a Django library, to make them indistinguishable. The first problem is the structure. Django project structure is flat. So in the same level, they put the project and the apps. And the PEP8 here provides a very good guideline, which is let's do namespaces for everything. Everything should have an encapsulation, a wrapper. So by just taking our apps from the same structure of the project and putting them inside a folder and including an init.py file, we create a module. So we're namespacing our apps of the project. And just with that change in our setup file, we can create a setup file. And because now our project is a package, it's a module, just with that change, the package, the project is already installable, it's already packageable with just one change. So from the technical stance point of view, it's already done. The next problems are user experience problems. Python, Django includes a setting file, and they tells us if you want to customize the file, you can create a development file, a settings file, a deployment file, a production file. That's good and great when you want to install to DigitalOcean, Amazon, and all the deployment environments that you can deploy Django. It doesn't become an orchestration problem. It becomes an orchestration nightmare because you have so many settings that your project can be deployed to. So I've seen Django projects try to come with a solution, and they usually come to the same solution, which is a settings local py and his brother local underscores. And that does a problem because you are creating this file that is very intelligent, that will include a local settings file and override using an import asterisk. And that is not really DIY. You are moving the problem from one file to another. So when you try to recreate the environment, you need to drag along the file, so it doesn't really fix the problem. So how do we fix the problem with settings? Let's do the same solution we did with apps. Let's do a namespace for settings. And we can take the settings file and we can convert it into a module. And we move all the basic, the common domination settings, the basic default into a base file from which our other settings files can import and just override. So basically we are doing object-oriented, we are doing inheritance at the level of the settings files. So this is now how our project structure is evolving. Since predefined setting file for production, we had configured the widget file to use only the production setting file. So now when our users are going to deploy, their setting is already ready for them. They don't have to be changing their widget file, which is something non-technical user we have no idea how to do. PyPI also provides a justification for this. We have to be as explicit as possible. A settings file called Roberto or called settings underscore local doesn't say anything. But if we namespace our settings files inside a settings module, it becomes quite clear what they're supposed to do. Mayan settings development, Mayan settings testing. We can also do a sub-module, Mayan setting Travis MySQL, Mayan settings Travis Postgres. And we can include testing files very easily like this, and we don't have to create giant .travis YAML files that will do acrobatics with environment variables to try to test different databases. Secret key. We know what the secret key is. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to let the documentation tells us. And there's a specific part that is very important. It should be unique, unpredictable, because it is used for signing content. We have to be very clear. It should be unique, unpredictable. How many of you have seen this over and over again? In the default, in the initial commit of projects, you will see this along. So how do we fix this? We tell our users you have to create a random key for your project when you install. We even put it in the documentation. The first step you have to do is create. Nobody does that. At the best, they're going to just smash the keyboard and try to produce something random. And when they do this and try to run the project, they start getting these errors because they don't know how to produce a secret file. It's not even documented in the documentation. Where in Django is documented the procedure to create a secret file? Actually, it's in the code. So a lot of users write in the Google group, and they fix their problems with when our software doesn't install due to secret key. And I told them, how do you fix it? And they write replies like this. And I imagine they're talking to me in a very low voice because they're ashamed. And when I read the replies, it's usually this. I don't know what the secret key was, but so I just remark it and restart the server, and it worked. And a week later, their servers get hacked. This is how a non-technical user will fix the problems if you don't help them. So where in Django it is explained to you which characters you can use for a secret key. It's not even in the documentation. It's inside the command start project.py. And it tells us that it has to be only letters and certain specific characters, and it should be 50 characters long. How many of you have really created a secret file in your life that was according to those rules all the time? Usually never, because even we don't sometimes forget where those are. The other problem with non-technical users is that the installation steps are too long, are many. They have to clone the repository, they have to start a project, they have to create a secret key, they have to customize. So let's try to make the life easier for our future users. Let's give them a single command that will do database migration, initial administration creation. Let's create a new kind of command for Django projects. Let's call it, for example, initial setup. They just run that and everything's set for them. So this is a custom Django command line command that does just that. It creates, since we already solved the problem of the namespace settings configuration system, so we create for every user, for every installation of our software, we create a settings local file, which is auto-generated by this command. Excuse me. And in the same command, we are creating for them a special key that fits the requirements of the official secret key specification. Because this is a file that's created specifically for each installation of the project, we also make sure that the users don't run the initial setup command more than once and erase the already generated settings and secret key. So we warn them. They have to back up this file. So to improve this for other projects, I created ticket 4528 in Django that moves this logic into a separate utils.py file so that when we create a custom initial setup command, we don't have to copy paste the secret key generation code. We just import it. That way, if Django in the future changes the way secret keys are generated, we don't have to copy paste and update our project. It's a very trivial patch, but I think it will do a lot in moving in this direction. So now our users have their secret key created. Let's say in our case, a lot of our customers are contractors from companies, contracted to do rebranding of the project. So they have a little technical knowledge, and the first thing they do is they clone the repository. They start doing changes. And when they are going to publish their changes, stuff like this happen. You have to keep your secret key secret. How many of you have tried to do this, do an amend to a commit real fast, and you just type -A, tap for autocomplete, and instead of getting --amend, you get a -O, and you just publish your secret key. So let's do our users. Let's help our users, and let's make sure their secret key does not get published. And if they recreate the package, let's also put that in the manifest. So now that we have a local settings for each installation, we think it will be a great idea that the default manage.py file uses the user's local settings and not the one the package came from when it was installed. So we changed the manage.py command to use the local generated file, and it won't run. Why? Because we created a chicken and egg problem. The manage.py file cannot use the user's local files because it doesn't exist yet when they're trying to install it. So in our main namespace module for settings, we add this. Our main settings file will try to import the user-specific settings, and if they're not available, it will fall back to factory defaults. That way, our project will run even when users haven't configured it yet. At least they will see something. And stuff like the initial command will run, because it will try to look at the local settings for this project. They don't exist because the user just downloaded the package, so it will fall back to the defaults. If the user has already configured the project and they do a run server, they will run from the local user files, the user's customized settings, without any logic, with just that simple try exception for try exception catch. And when they run Wishy automatically now uses the production settings, which in part imports from the local settings, which in part is an extension of the base files. So now our setting scenario is much cleaner, much more reduced. We have a very big base settings file. This is like a base class, and we usually import it in different settings that represent the different scenarios where the project might be used, including the local file, which imports from the base, has the specific credentials for this user, and yet our development settings file will work because it will try to import from the master setting namespace, which in turn will try to import from local. If local exists, it will use local, otherwise it will use base. So even the development settings will work if the application has been configured or not. And to continue to create a single master installation step, let's do for our users the very menial task of just running the schemas. In Python 1.6 and Django 1.6, it was syncdb -- migrate, because everybody used south, hopefully, and to create the auto admin user. It will be now migrate. So let's give our users just a single command. They don't have to switch from the project to the documentation. And we can run syncdb migrate, and we can convert that into a command, custom command module. And we can call syncdb, and this is a very nice feature that I don't think is documented. You can take -- options, and you can pass them as optional arguments to your instance, and you can call options on a command very easily this way. And by default, Django wants to create a admin user. We don't think it's a good idea, and InfoSec will agree with us. And I'll tell you why in a moment. So this is now how our custom installation management command starting to look. We create a local file. We create a settings key, a secret key for our users automatically. We make sure our users don't overwrite their configuration file by running this step again. And we also call the management command to migrate, to create the database. This might not be the steps you will do for yourself, but this is the step our 95% of users will do when they at least want to try the software, which in the case of enterprise is usually a big step before committing to a purchase or a contract. So right now, this is all the things that our custom initial setup file accomplishes. Like I said, letting the users create their own admin user is usually not a good idea, because even when we're testing, we do silly things like this. We create admin, 1, 2, 3, 5, admin. So what's even worse, even if that is bad, what's even worse than creating silly password for admin users is creating default password for admin users. And projects sometimes ship by default with a password for admin user. It is a bad project, but there are even sites dedicated to this. So if you do that, in less than a week, your project will be published with the default password you included in it. So don't do it. So how do we fix this problem? We create a singleton and we create the admin user for our users. And we store a random password. In this sense, Django already helps us. The user manager already has a create super user command. So that already is solved. What about the password? The manager also has a make random password. But even then, we don't do that by default. Mayan has a system where each app has its own settings. So we use this as the default to create the password, but still give DevOps the option to change this if they want to change this. So this is all about giving sane defaults, but allowing experienced users to change or override them very easily. We have to pester now our users to change the default password. So how do we do that? We create a custom tag that will check our singleton model to see if it has data. If it has data, it will go into the login screen and basically bother our user every time it logs in. There's an admin created, user created for you. You have to change this password, change this password, change this password. Until they change this password, this message will appear. So even though there's an admin user created, it's like the debug flag. We are pestering our users. Now they know they have to do this, and the admin-admin combination will not be forgotten so easily. So how do we erase the message? We just hook into the post-save signal from the user model. And if the user changed the password of the user that we have stored, that was created, the admin, then we erase the message. To make this step easier, this code was extracted, and it's now its own app. It's in PyPI. It's called Django AutoAdmin. So if you want to add this capability to your projects, this is available. You just download it, add it to your install apps. It even includes a sample template. Media files. Django has done incredible advances in this, but yet there's still way to go, because even though from the programming standpoint it has done great improvements, in the deployment sense it's not. We assume all our deployment scenarios are the same, and there's stuff like Docker and Staccato where you can have read-only directory and special designated read and write directories. We don't know them beforehand. Our project needs to work everywhere. So let's, by default, make our apps use the Django storage backends. And by default, let's use the file storage backend. But let's give our users the option to change that if they want. Again, this is all about using same defaults. The file storage backend will require our directory. So let's create inside the namespace of our project a media file. Why inside the namespace? Because it's the only directory we already know is writable. We are deploying, we don't know where else we can put these files, but we already know that if the project was able to be installed here, then the media files can reside here. And they are inside the namespace of the project. So every media access is now a subdirectory of the base media directory, and we calculate that in our master setup file, and everything now resides inside that, even our default SQLite database. This way, we are guaranteed in the 19% population of users, it will be installable, and it will run on the first try. I actually put this because I kept forgetting what I was going to say, but it's relevant. We just did all this. We have been forgetting something. Yes. We have to keep our users from publishing their media files. So let's do them the favor and put everything, also block them in the git ignore and in the manifest file to help our users not to publish all the inside corporate documents when they do a push. Now, the software has been installed. How do we manage it? How do we do the collect static? How do we do everything, every maintenance command? Because our project is inside a virtual environment, you usually have to know the path to the manage.py file. For us, it's not that big of a deal because we might make an alias. We're running inside a virtual env where you can type manage.py everywhere. But once you are deploying, once you want to run this from outside, the environment where you install, you have to know the path. It's a very long path. So let's make it easier for our users to manage their install. And Django, Python actually provides a very nice way to do this. Inside the namespace of our project, let's create a bin file, a bin directory, and we're going to put a copy of manage.py. Then in the settings.py file, we tell it, when you install the project, I want you to install also this file in a location where it's executable for the install. Now our users, when they install, they don't have to type the whole path -manage.py. They can just install, they can just run the management command that we created, which in this case we call it the same as the project. Now they can manage the project without having to know the entire path structure to get to the management command. And the only times they will have to know the whole path is when they're going to reference stuff like static files or installation directories, for example, from Nginx. Our users are accustomed to install a program, and the program will help them do the initial setup. Sadly, I haven't seen that many Django projects do that. So let's help our users do that. Our software is like a telescope. We already put it in a box. We put it on the store. Now it's easy for them to buy it. But is it easy for them to use it? We might think so. It might not be the case. So from inside the project, let's give them the minimal help they need to at least get the project running. And it's very easy. Sometimes this is an example code that you can copy. It's just a class where the apps of the project can put a condition that if it is not met, it will display a help message. And each app can register what it wants to tell the user to do until its own condition is met. And we can then display that in the welcome screen, a getting started message. Hey user, you need to do this. You need to configure at least one document source. You have to configure at least this before starting to use this project. That way they don't have to go. They don't lose the flow of the application and going back and forth to the documentation, which in the case of enterprise software, you have a span of minutes, maybe hours. If they don't manage to use the software in the first or second try, they're not going to call you again. So let's make it as easier for them to at least try the software. Because when you know where things go, you can move coconuts with swallows. What are the disadvantages of this approach? So far, only one, that the paths are very long because we are referencing everything inside a virtual environment. And the media files are inside the virtual environment. That might not be ideal everywhere, but this is about same defaults. We already came up with a solution, so for the next version, we're going to be doing inclusion of an initial setup, a command. We're going to do like a start project or start site command that will have the media files in a specific location. And I have to confess that came from Django CMS. They do basically that. It was a very good solution. So if the demo gods allow me, let's see if this runs. We create a virtual environment, we activate it, and we just type pip install myen edms. And because it is a Django project package as a pip install file, it will automatically execute the requirements file, which in the case of Maya are quite a lot. But the good thing is, even though there's a lot of output, we already just basically run one command. The first two commands are just setting the environment. So this is just installing from one command. This also assumes that the binary and operating system requirements are met, but those are outside the scope of the Django project. So pretending our users to do all this is not a solution for us. This is below compiling. And it is installed. Now usually we will run a syncdb migrate create admin. In this case, just create Mayan EDMS initial setup. This create the database, creates an automatic admin user with the same password default, creates a secret key, and set up all our media and everything ready for a user to experience the project. To test the project, we do Mayan EDMS run server. And we just install a Django, a very big, 18,000 lines of code Django project with just one command and one command for setup. So this is what we want all Django projects to behave like. And this way, Django projects will start behaving like package software, where you buy, you do one command, two commands, set up, next, or in this case, nothing, just two commands, run server, and the users can try the software. It works with, it has 98% functionality. The only functionality it doesn't automatically starts up is the Celery, because we don't know if they already have Redis or something. So we run Celery in eager mode. So at least if they upload documents, it works. OCR works, search works, tagging, metadata, everything, almost everything works just from these two commands. So that's pretty much it for me. If you have any questions.
If I'm not wrong, there is a recommendation to put the secret file in a user home file. Maybe I miss it from the presentation.
You want the command or the...
No. To store the secret code content generated in a dot private or read-only file in the user home.
No, it is installed inside Mayan /settings/local.py.
Exactly. Why don't you put it in the user home?
That is a very good suggestion.
It's not mine. I think it's something somewhere in Django's documentation, whatever.
Oh, it's a good suggestion.
I follow this.
In this case, we put that in the directory because it might be installed in a for example in a Docker image where the user is a root, and you maybe don't want the settings files in root. The philosophy is not to assume anything about the installation environment. So we install everything where we know we can do stuff. But maybe, well, we can incorporate that, do like a settings file where the user by default will go here, but you can customize that it can go to the home folder of the user installing the software. Yes, That's a very good suggestion. Please open a ticket. I will laugh. I will lose. Okay. No, but it's a very good suggestion. We can do that definitely. Any other questions? Yeah.
No more questions?
Oh, thank you. When the people don't ask questions, it's because they either didn't understand anything or they understand everything. So I'm glad it was the second one. Well, thank you. Please. Thank you. Thank you.